A World War II veteran took on an urgent mission more than a decade ago, and it just paid off. Here's CBS's Steve Hartman on the road.
Inside the Vitalia Senior Residences in Strongsville, Ohio, 95-year-old Frank Grassberger sits on a treasure. Literally sits. In fact, Frank says, other than his wife Dolores, almost nothing matters more to him than this note, which he carries everywhere.
I'd never be without it.
Why did it matter so much that you have it with you all the time?
Because it's something that somebody thought of me that much.
When he has that letter with him, he has a feeling of faith and trust and love.
To understand how a letter can do all that, you first need to know that Frank is a World War II veteran. And back in 2009, a third grader wrote to thank him for his service. If it wasn't for you, we would never have freedom. I'm so happy you made sacrifices. Your friend, Deshauna Priest. To Frank, that simple thank you came to symbolize a life well served.
I'm tickled to death that I have a letter like this.
He wanted to thank the author.
We never could find her. He says, before I close my eyes, I have to find her. I have to find her.
Just about everyone who works here was well aware of Frank's attachment to that letter and his decade-long desire to find the little girl who wrote it. So the staff did some sleuthing, and lo and behold.
Hey.
Deshauna is now 21. She vividly remembers writing the letter as a school assignment because she so admired people in uniform.
Just like, wow. Like,
I get to write to a veteran.
Yeah.
So it was like an honor.
Yeah.
An honor that continued.
So here she is.
When Deshauna surprised Frank in her National Guard uniform.
Honest to God, oh, I love you so much. You can't imagine the feeling I had when she stood next to me. It just took my breath away, it really did.
I thought, where's his heart pills? Because I thought, oh, this is it. This is the big one.
I'm telling you, this is a godsend. It really is.
Fortunately, Frank's heart only swelled and may never return to its original size.
So this is the beginning of something.
Yeah. Friendship. Family, not friendship.
There's love there, deep down in the heart. She's like my third daughter. She really is.
It started with a lot of love and affection, and it's ending the same way.
Who knew a simple thank you could make a life complete? Steve Hartman, on the road in Strongsville, Ohio.
Steve Hartman wraps up the week for us with 50 stars, 13 stripes, and one little boy who can't get enough of them.
For 6-year-old Finn Daly of West Hartford, Connecticut, the best view in his house is from the front door looking up at the flag. Finn has Down syndrome. He's also autistic, a combination that, according to his parents, Kevin and Brooke, has blessed him with a deep appreciation for the flag.
I think it's the movement.
If it's moving, if the wind is blowing, he would sit there for an hour and just watch the flag go back and forth, which is kind of the beauty of Finn, too.
Somehow, he has found comfort and contentment in a sight most of us take for granted. And it's not just his own flag.
We're fortunate we have a lot of flags in the neighborhood, so it creates for very long and slow walks.
Come on, buddy.
And it was on one of those walks with the family that Finn discovered his flag de resistance.
Here's your flag.
Oh.
A real beauty, mounted on a tree, hanging right over the sidewalk a quarter-mile from his house. Finn would make camp on that sidewalk if you let him. He is that enamored. The flag belongs to a man named Todd Disk.
The boy would just sit there transfixed by the flag.
What did you think when you saw that?
I was like, God bless America. This kid wants to look at my flag, then I'm all for it.
Which is why, not long after he saw Finn, he sawed some boards and made a little perch for that little patriot. Just left it out by the tree for Finn's family to discover.
What do you think? And I'm crying, and my daughter Rose is saying, don't cry, Mom, it's okay, this is exciting. Just a little overwhelming, but in a good way.
Norman Rockwell couldn't have imagined a more uniquely American moment. A vision of strength and compassion in one glorious frame. All created by a master of kindness with nothing more on his palette than a circular saw and an eye for empathy.
It's such a small gesture, but things like this really restore your faith in humanity. Like, there's still good people out there that want to do kind things for no other reason but just to be kind.
For no other reason, which may be the best reason of all.
What are you doing, Finny?
Steve Hartman, on the road in West Hartford, Connecticut.
We end with a family proudly looking to the future while never forgetting their past. Here's Steve Hartman on the road.
Long ago, but not nearly as long ago as you might expect, sharecroppers worked this field in South Carolina. As late as 1964, Bo and Lake Giles were still toiling like indentured servants. In fact, their children say they were, by far, the poorest family around.
We had to pick cotton all day long.
Oh yeah, you had to pick cotton during the school year.
We could only go to school when it was raining. There was very little food. I was praying every day, God, get us out of this situation.
But even as those prayers went unanswered, the Giles children knew there was a better life out there because it was so tantalizingly close.
The shack they lived in used to be right there, but in their view, just past this pond here, there was another house. You can see it right back there. It's really just a modest home. But to those sharecroppers kids picking cotton in these fields, that place seemed like the Taj Mahal.
Me looking across the street at it, it looked like a mansion.
You know, they got a bathroom and stuff.
Felt like they were rich compared to our broken down home.
You had flowers. All of that was a sense of freedom.
And all of that is why it felt like liberation when half a century later, the Giles family moved across the street into the Taj Mahal. Some of the siblings pooled their money to buy the property, which they're now renovating to use for family reunions and holiday gatherings. Eventually, the plan is to put the house in a trust so future generations of Giles will know the story and learn the lesson. That poverty doesn't have to beget poverty. That through education and determination, poverty can breed success. Dorothy became a teacher, Ruthie a nurse, Roosevelt chairman of the board, but he says still a sharecropper in his soul.
It assures you appreciation of where you come from.
Crossed the way, and now we're sitting here instead of sitting over there.
We have a better life.
This holiday season, many Americans will be unwrapping presents. But for families like the Giles, the greatest gift is the only gift that truly keeps on giving. The sacrifice of those who made all this possible. Steve Hartman, on the road in Kelton, South Carolina.
With the baseball playoffs heating up, CBS's Steve Hartman has a story that touches all the bases. Here's tonight's On the Road.
There you go.
A couple weeks ago, Brian Robinson and his son Carter were at this batting cage in Montgomery, Alabama, when a random stranger threw him a high, hard one to the heart.
There was this bucket of balls with a note.
The note read, "Hope someone can use some of these baseballs. I pitched them to my son and grandson for countless rounds." The writer went on to say that his family is now grown and gone, but what he wouldn't give to pitch a couple of buckets to them. If you are a father, cherish these times. Brian and his wife Stormy read that note with tears in their eyes.
It felt like a moment for us.
It still does.
It does. We need to soak in more of our kids and time with our kids.
Just the message the author intended.
I was just hoping it would inspire some people.
Randy Long used to love watching and coaching his kids. So much so that when he came across that old bucket of balls in his garage, he couldn't bring himself to just throw away the memories. He says he needed closure.
It was like a goodbye, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was a sign-off type thing. Okay, that chapter is gone. Let's see what else is coming on.
But unbeknownst to Randy, his baseball days were headed into extra innings.
You want a fist bump?
This week, he met the Robinsons at a local park where Randy learned about a void in Carter's life. The boy lost both his grandfathers at a very young age. They never saw him play.
We'd love for you to come
I was going to say,
We'd love for you to come
please
watch.
let me know.
Yeah.
All right.
Randy said he'd definitely be at the next game, and then asked Carter for a little catch.
Right where I had it. You can see the smile on my face, Carter? This is bringing back memories.
Seems now Iowa isn't the only state
Pop up
with a field of dreams.
There we go.
It's what I've always wanted for him.
I'm sure a lot of people across the country now are realizing that's not just a bucket of balls anymore.
No, it's a fountain of youth and a binding force for generations. Steve Hartman, CBS News, on the road.
Finally tonight, 71 years ago, women were made a permanent part of the military. With toy soldiers, change comes slower. Here's Steve Hartman on the road.
I'm coming in for another shot.
It was during one of her brother's air raids that 6-year-old Vivian Lord was struck by the fact that her Army men were all just that, men.
I noticed that there was no girl Army men.
No girls.
They don't make them.
And were you disappointed when you found out there weren't any?
Very disappointed. I don't know why anybody has not thought of that.
So the little girl from Little Rock, Arkansas wrote a letter that read in part, "Please, can you make Army men girls that look like women?" She sent copies to several Army men manufacturers, including Jeff Immel, owner of BMC Toys in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
I've never gotten a letter from a child like that before, but every now and then somebody asks, do you have any female toy soldiers?
The answer is no, although Jeff says it is on a list of potential future projects. He even showed Vivian some of his concept drawings.
They were doing sketches, but they were busy making boy Army men.
Vivian just can't understand why this has to be so hard.
I'm not a big company. It's expensive to produce a new figure set, so I got to do my due diligence and make sure it's something that people actually want.
And Jeff says a lot of people really don't want women in the vintage plastic military.
Part of the pushback over the years has been that there weren't women in combat during World War II, so including them in a traditional set, brandishing anything other than a nurse's bag, wouldn't be historically accurate. Might confuse the poor tykes. Of course, dinosaurs and Chewbacca never fought on the same battlefield either, yet no one seems to have an issue with that pretend play. So why not empower young girls by including women soldiers in these sets?
So
get ready, Vivian.
I'm going to do it.
You're going to do it?
I'm going to do it.
So Vivian put this to the top of the list.
Yeah, she put it to the top of the list easily. Yeah.
Shortly after receiving Vivian's letter, Jeff commissioned the first prototype. He expects them to be ready by Christmas 2020.
And that makes me super happy. I would play with them every day.
Every day.
A decisive victory in the battle for equality.
I'm trying to get your airplane.
Steve Hartman, on the road in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Now the story of a little boy in search of courage and the wise old man who helped him find it. Steve Hartman is on the road.
It is the tallest 20 inches in sports. The distance between a diving board and the surface of the water can feel like half a body length, especially when it's half your body length. Which is why, all summer long, 4-year-old Dylan Stick has been cheating the system, gradually lowering himself into the water like a fragile egg.
He had no interest in it.
His mom,
ever.
Marla.
You don't want to pressure him.
Right, right. We were just saying, hey, you want to give it a shot? You want to give it a try? And
he was no way.
Right. He wasn't interested.
Enter 95-year-old Daniel Biss.
They drafted me.
Daniel was in the Air Force during World War II in Korea.
Radio operator.
He knows a thing or two about fear and bravery. So when he saw this neighborhood kid at a family pool party in Canton, Ohio, and heard everyone trying to coax him off the board,
he just wouldn't go.
He knew exactly what Dylan needed.
Just needed some convincing, I guess.
I guess he did.
So I was going to try anyway.
Are you videoing this?
So Daniel borrowed a swimsuit and with cane in hand, stepped up to set the example.
This is a miracle!
This is a miracle, one kid yelled, as if Lazarus himself had risen up to the springboard. And it did feel that way. The great-grandfather hadn't been on a diving board in 50 years. And yet there he stood, ready and willing to teach a lesson in courage, which almost turned into a lesson in first aid.
Everyone kind of like held their breath and got real nervous, like, oh, was this a bad idea?
Oh, I was up to that far. I figured I may as well go through with it.
And so, at the age of 95, he dove for Dylan.
Jump out! Jump out! And he dives!
Not the prettiest dive I've ever seen.
No. I could have done better.
Actually, he really couldn't have done better, because shortly after Daniel took his last jump off a diving board, Dylan took his first.
Yeah! It was really neat that inspired him to do it. It was a neat moment.
This all happened last month, and today Dylan jumps no problem. Hopefully, his courage will now inspire you with whatever leap you need to make. Steve Hartman, on the road in Canton, Ohio.
We love to end the week on a high note, and Steve Hartman was happy to oblige. Here's tonight's On the Road.
He's only in 3rd grade, but 9-year-old Henry Boyer of Howell, Michigan already knows what he wants to be. Last fall, he attended his first University of Michigan football game, and he was wowed.
They were that good?
My mind was blown of how good they played.
But it wasn't the football that he fell for. It was the marching band. And from that moment to this, Henry has been rocking out to their CD,
Let's Go Blue,
and watching old halftime shows on YouTube. He even wrote a letter to the band saying how he'd love to sign up someday. In response, they sent him a bunch of swag and a card inviting him to audition when he's old enough.
I just really liked the card.
What were you feeling in that moment?
Surprised and heartwarmed.
His mother got it on video.
What did they say?
They said they going to accept me in a few years.
Into what?
Into the marching band.
Are you excited?
Yes, I'm really excited.
That was nice of them, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Jeff and Kim Boyer.
Yeah, I mean, just such a simple act to reach back out to him. It's changed his world.
Well, yeah, he's on fire for music now.
Henry asked if he could double up on piano lessons and started taking drums too.
Like the card said, practice hard and I will practice hard.
So you can get there someday.
Yes. I just have a really good feeling that I'm going to be in the marching band.
If all goes as planned, Henry will join the band in the fall of 2029. But we thought, and the school agreed, that's an awfully long time to wait for a dream to come true. So we set up a little surprise right behind this door.
No way.
Henry, this is your Michigan marching band.
No way. Oh.
We're so excited to have you here with us, Henry.
I can't believe I'm here.
The Michigan Marching Band wrote out a single note, and just look at the symphony that followed.
You got it.
A masterpiece of kindness and inspiration that struck a major chord in this young man's life. So now, hopefully, no matter where his music takes him, Henry will always follow the lead of this marching band and play it forward.
Nice job.
Steve Hartman, on the road.
You guys have the best music ever.
In Ann Arbor, Michigan.
I can't wait to join.
Oh, yeah. It'll come soon.
Tonight, CBS's Steve Hartman catches up with one of his favorite people. He's one part Forrest Gump and one part Energizer Bunny. Here's tonight's On the Road.
High on the list of things I never thought I'd see is this. Ernie Andrus, who turns 97 next week, still marching across America.
Every step of the way.
I first met Ernie 6 years ago. He was in the middle of the Arizona desert trying to become the oldest person to ever run coast to coast. 3 years later, he actually made it to the Georgia shore, only to then turn around and start running back the other way. Ernie is now a year into the return trip. We caught up with him outside Lufkin, Texas, plodding along slow and steady as usual, albeit slightly slower.
Hey, I better hang on.
And noticeably less steady. A few weeks ago, a doctor diagnosed Ernie with congestive heart failure.
Yeah, that's what they told me, but he's selling pacemakers.
So you think that's just all a sales pitch?
Yeah.
There's a chance he could be telling you the truth, though, Ernie. Does that change anything?
No, I'll run till I drop. I always said I'll die with my running shoes on.
Much of Ernie's motivation to soldier on comes from his sailor past. During World War II, Ernie served on a ship called an LST, and he's been running to raise money for the LST Memorial in Evansville, Indiana.
This shouldn't be forgotten. It's the ship that won the war.
But along the way, this run has also taken on a more personal purpose, as thousands have joined him for at least a leg of the journey.
God bless you, sir.
They have listened to his stories, celebrated his fortitude, and given Ernie the key to a long life, a deep desire to keep pressing forward.
Run, Ernie, run!
And that's why, although his doctor says time is short, Ernie is still planning to reach the Pacific sometime around his 101st birthday.
So let's say you make it to California, then you stop running?
No, I have a plan for a coast-to-coast relay.
Ernie Andrus.
Yeah.
Optimistic for the long run. Steve Hartman, CBS News, on the road.
So, when it comes to heroes, you couldn't find a better example than the one in our next story. CBS's Steve Hartman goes on the road with an update about our past, present, and future.
It all began here in Raleigh, North Carolina,
A1.
with a flurry of plastic bombshells.
You sunk our battleship!
As we first reported in 2015, Carter and Jack Hansen were really into Battleship, which led to a family vacation to see the Yorktown, a retired aircraft carrier in Charleston, South Carolina.
I just realized how amazing history could be.
And it was about to get even better. On that same trip, the boys learned about a World War II vet named Robert Harding, who actually served on the Yorktown. They got his email address, started corresponding daily, and even put his picture by their beds. Give him the chance and they'd chew your ear off about Mr. Harding and what he did on board as a plane handler.
And when the plane's ready to launch, he would go unstrap this, and the plane would go flying that direction.
The folks who run the Yorktown say a lot of kids love the ship, but no kid has ever fallen for a sailor who served here like these two boys have fallen for Mr. Harding. Which is why, for this trip, the Yorktown made special arrangements
Okay.
for a surprise visitor.
Mr. Harding?
That's right.
Hugging an old salt never felt so sweet.
Oh, you're a good boy.
It was hard to tell who enjoyed it more or who needed it more.
Japanese plane.
Over the years, Mr. Harding says he'd kept most of his war stories to himself.
Where they were firing, I guess I need somebody to talk to about it. It's surprising the way it worked out.
Since we first told this story, the kids have stayed in touch with Mr. Harding, sending hundreds of emails, each one signed, "Your friends and shipmates." Once they even turned the tables on Mr. Harding, surprising him at his house in Oklahoma. Whoever said history is irrelevant, obviously, never fell in love with it.
We don't know about how we've changed his lives, but we know that he obviously changed ours.
Steve Hartman, CBS News, on the road.
Now to an emergency in America where young people are helping to save the day. CBS's Steve Hartman goes on the road.
When people call for an ambulance in Sackett's Harbor, New York, and the crew shows up at their front door, almost everyone has the same reaction.
A lot of people just come up and ask you, wait, how old are you?
You're the EMT?
Or when's the ambulance coming?
So what do you say?
We just explain to them, we are the ambulance.
These baby-faced first responders took over the village's emergency medical services not long after COVID hit, when all the older EMS volunteers either couldn't or wouldn't do the job anymore. That exodus, part of a national trend. In rural America, 35% of ambulance services are all volunteer, and many of those departments, 69%, say they're struggling to find help. Fortunately, at least in Sackett's Harbor, desperation led to inspiration.
In New York State, you can be an EMT at 17 and can assist even younger. And when these local high schoolers heard that, they decided to step up, took the required training, and resuscitated the department.
We went from not even having our licenses to saving people's lives.
Being able to help those people, I really like doing that. So.
And by all accounts, they are doing that. Whether you've fallen off a ladder,
they're very professional,
have severe chest pains,
they know what they're doing,
or can barely breathe.
Absolutely credit them for saving my life.
This group of teens and young adults save the day almost every day, sacrificing much of their free time and surrendering some of their innocence. They say the hardest part is telling people their loved one is gone.
It's like time freezes and everything stops, and that's one of the hardest things to do, for sure.
And then you go back to algebra class.
Yeah. Was hard.
So why do it?
Because who else is there to do it if we don't? Someone needs to. Someone needs to step up and do it.
American youth to the rescue once more. Steve Hartman on the road in Sackett's Harbor, New York.
Baseball has its field of dreams, and now this local football team has one too. Here's CBS's Steve Hartman on the road.
250 miles south of Denver, near the edge of isolation, sits the tiny town of Branson, Colorado. Blink and you'll moose it. But Branson does have a sight to see, what many have dubbed the worst football field in America.
No, I don't dispute that title.
Brad Doherty is the Branson High School athletic director and head dirts keeper.
How bad can a football field be?
We would go out before every game and fill in and collapse as many gopher holes as we could find. It felt like Bill Murray in Caddyshack.
And the grass would stab you, the grass. Maybe you'd land in cactus if you were lucky.
But the Bearcats loved football enough to endure. Until the end of last season, when the other teams in the league said they wouldn't play on this rocky rectangle of high desert anymore. It was just too dangerous, they said.
It was pretty heart-wrenching to hear that people didn't want to come play on our field.
Football in our community is the one thing that grabs everybody and brings everybody together.
Which is why Brad decided to attempt a Hail Mary. Had the kids make a video explaining how they needed artificial turf because they didn't have enough water in Branson to grow real grass, and how the price shocked the school board.
We need your help.
Brad posted the plea on social media, hoping anyone outside Branson would see it.
You just do that for kids.
But this was a goal that was destined to fail.
Yeah, and that's why it was so amazing.
Thanks to the kindness of strangers from across the country, Branson's Bad News Bearcats are back in the ballgame. Ended up raising more than $500,000 and now have the best field in the league. They just had their first game and won by almost 60 points. But Brad says the bigger victory is the field itself.
It became something that we show our kids. You can aspire to do great and impossible things.
An oasis of inspiration for generations to come. Steve Hartman, CBS News, on the road.
For this week's On the Road, CBS's Steve Hartman checks into a hotel with quite the view, but even better, acoustics.
Every year, 600 of the best high school singers from across Kentucky gather to practice and perform in Louisville's Convention Center. And all these booming voices have to stay somewhere.
It can get a little noisy.
For that reason,
Earplugs?
the Hyatt Regency offers earplugs.
Just in case.
Knowing a gross violation of the quiet hours is not only likely, it's a 35-year tradition.
Back in 1987, late one night, a small group of kids, still wired from practice, gathered along the balcony here.
Everybody's chatting away, waving hi to each other.
Choir director Brett Burton was a student at the time.
There's just certain things that happen in life that leave a memory on you.
And this is one of them.
Mm-hmm. It was just something amazing.
Today, the same wonder unfolds in much the same way. The waving, the ruckus, and then, out of nowhere, the hum.
Someone sings a pitch.
It can be anyone from anywhere.
Once one person starts, everyone wants to be a part of it.
And eventually the entire hotel catches on.
And then you're singing the national anthem.
Some say it's the acoustics, others the sheer volume of talent. But whatever the reason, one thing is clear. Whoever opted for the earplugs made a grave mistake.
It's like a cylinder of sound.
It's all around you.
So surreal.
And it's completely organic. There's no planning or adult direction. This is all kids from all walks of life who every year make it a priority to fill this hotel atrium with a riveting reminder that we are not a nation of soloists, but a chorus of shared values that, when joined together, resonate like nothing the world has ever heard. Steve Hartman, on the road in Louisville, Kentucky.
We end this summer night with a bit of stargazing. Here's Steve Hartman on the road.
Lubeck Jastrzebski and Nancy Nemhauser of Mount Dora, Florida, say it was the strangest thing. They noticed their 25-year-old autistic son, Chip, kept opening the same art book, kept turning to the same page, and kept staring into the same starry night.
And it seemed to comfort him. And given that there is not a whole lot that helps, we have to capitalize on whatever we can use.
Which is why they hired someone to paint a huge Starry Night-inspired mural on the wall in front of their house. Chip loved it. The city did not.
Last year, this citation showed up at the door. It said graffiti is prohibited, and until the Van Gogh was Van gone, the family could be fined as much as $250 a day, up to the value of the house.
First I thought it was a prank, and then I thought it was a mistake.
So they asked the code enforcement officer, which is it?
What do we have to do to fix this? And she said the wall has to match the house.
You know, she meant for you to repaint the wall to match the house.
We followed the instructions.
They did follow the instructions. Today, the wall definitely matches the house. But despite their cynical compliance, or perhaps because of it, the couple's legal problems only intensified. Next, the city said the mural needed to come down for a second reason.
It violated a sign ordinance.
A sign?
That was their new argument.
This is a sign.
Yeah, that's a sign.
Mount Dora Mayor Nick Jerome.
A violation of a sign ordinance based on the fact that it had squigglies. It had...
Squigglies?
Squigglies.
Define that for our audience.
As one of those circle type things.
Oh, yeah. Van Gogh did a lot of those.
Yeah.
This is what the family was up against.
Oh, my gosh.
Which is why, even though they knew their son would be disappointed, Nancy and Lubeck almost painted it over in surrender white.
And the turning point for you, I think, was when a young girl offered her allowance to help us to fight to keep the mural.
Even if we lose the house, so be it.
To Lubeck especially, the mural had become a First Amendment issue. And eventually, the city saw it that way too. Last month, the mayor conceded and publicly apologized.
To the benefit of all concerned.
Today, those once scorned squiggles are now a tourist attraction, with people visiting from around the world.
Why do you think people are drawn here?
It's very seldom when two crazy people are willing to lose the house.
One, make that one.
First Amendment.
Freedom of speech on full display under this sun-splashed, starry night. Steve Hartman, on the road in Mount Dora, Florida.
When a Michigan woman decided to save her neighborhood outside Detroit 6 years ago, she never imagined what would happen next. CBS's Steve Hartman goes on the road with the community activist who's only just getting started.
Highland Park, Michigan, near Detroit, has all the makings of a ghost town. This was the library. This was the high school. Much of the town just plain was. Fortunately, one man's wasteland is another woman's blank slate.
I just felt that it was a space to build and do things on.
And run through your background in urban planning.
I don't have anything in urban planning except for sitting on this porch conjuring up what I want to do on this block. That's it. Look at all this space. We can do anything we want.
As we first reported in 2016.
You got a better imagination than I do.
Shamayim Harris is the unofficial architect of the most unlikely redevelopment project in Michigan.
We own the lot on the corner.
She set up a nonprofit.
That lot over there too.
Got donations.
And I own this lot right here too.
And started a crusade to reverse the decline on her block.
Are you paying all these people? I see a lot of people working.
Well, a couple of them, but most of them are volunteers.
Wow.
She tries to uplift everyone.
This is just some of her army.
When she needs something done, she knows exactly who to call, and it's gonna get done. That's why Mama Shoe's so amazing.
They call her Mama Shoe, and they say she'll put a boot in your behind if you don't help her rebuild this block of Avalon Street, where she drew up plans for a park and after-school homework house here, basketball, volleyball, and tennis courts here, a greenhouse and cafe in this old garage, and much more.
You're going to see this whole block looking like some of the suburban blocks that I see with the grass trimmed and flowers and all of that. That's what you're going to see. I know.
6 years later, her vision is coming true. When spring rolls around and this block awakens, the gardens will grow, kids will gather on the courts and in the homework house, and new families may move in.
How about that?
I know. Folks have gotten lots. They building this and that on their garden space, park areas. It's happening.
Michigan's most unlikely urban planner. Now also one of its most successful. Steve Hartman, on the road in Highland Park, Michigan.
Steve Hartman found the perfect way to end a week in which we honor America's veterans. Here's tonight's On the Road.
Inside a humble home in Wendell, Idaho, on a shelf tucked behind this picture, John Metzler keeps the letter that he says got him through the Vietnam War.
It's written by a girl in the 6th grade.
You didn't know this girl?
Nope.
John was a 23-year-old Army helicopter gunner.
When you got up in the morning, you always wondered whether you would see the sun go down at night.
And because he had such a deadly job, in such a thankless war, that little girl's note mattered. It arrived on Christmas Day, 1970, and it simply read, in part, "Dear serviceman, I want to give my sincere thanks for going over to war to fight for us. The class hopes you will be able to come home." Signed, Donna Kay. Obviously, it could have gone to any soldier, but John took it very personally.
It's not just the letter, right?
Damn sure isn't.
Does it mean as much to you today as it did when you got it?
Yeah. Fact is, I think it means more today than I did when I got it.
Because she said thank you.
Yeah.
Not long ago, John even asked some family members to find this Donna Kay, but they couldn't. At least, that's what they told him. She's actually alive and well, and about to deliver a second thank you message. This one, in person.
I remember writing the letter in the 6th grade. I was amazed that I could have the opportunity to write to a serviceman and maybe make his life a little simpler for a couple of minutes.
You took this assignment seriously.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And she continues to take it seriously. That's why she flew all the way from Florida to surprise this unsuspecting soldier.
You're real. Yes, you're real.
John's anonymous girl in the letter, now the friend before him. It has become almost cliche to thank a veteran for his or her service.
I don't believe it.
But John says we still need to say the words, because they're not only appreciated, sometimes they're desperately needed.
I can't believe it.
And I'm here.
Steve Hartman, on the road in Wendell, Idaho.
Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Now, an act of kindness tailor-made for an American sailor. Here's Steve Hartman on the road.
It was just another day at Causeway Alterations in Dunedin, Florida, when out of the blue, this elderly man walked in and asked if someone could make him a Navy uniform.
Why does a 97-year-old need a Navy uniform?
I love the uniform. I love my country, and I'm so happy I was able to serve.
This you?
It's me, yeah.
Joe Hall served in World War II as a Navy petty officer, first class.
Is that your ship?
Yeah.
He was on a destroyer escort, where he made some of the best friends of his life and lost a few too. They're all gone now, which is why Joe wanted that uniform, for when he sees them again. Susan Williams is the seamstress who waited on him.
I've made everything from underwear to wedding dresses. But to have a World War II veteran come in and say, I want to be buried in my uniform. It was like, this man is not leaving this store without me making this uniform because it's the most important thing I'll ever do in my life. And it became a strong obsession of mine to make it right.
For the next 3 weeks, Susan poured herself into this project, binding every seam, satin-lined cuffs, buttonholes by hand. She spent at least 100 hours.
I love this.
And charged almost nothing.
Oh, beautiful.
Joe actually got his uniform a few months ago, but came back in to try it on again at our request. He hardly seemed bothered.
I feel like I'm back in the service.
In fact, even though he wanted this for his death, you get the sense that now it's what he lives for.
Look at that. Can't beat it, right?
Right.
I wanted to be with my friends, be part of them. And this uniform kind of brings them close to me, you know.
They say the suit makes the man, but not in this case. Joe Hall was a loyal friend 7 decades before he got these dress blues. He just needed someone to sew his heart to his sleeve for that long-awaited reunion.
You've done a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Steve Hartman, on the road in Dunedin, Florida.
For some, service is a lifetime commitment. CBS's Steve Hartman with a case in point on the road.
If anyone has earned a coffee break, it's 63-year-old Mike Mason of Midlothian, Virginia. Mike served his country, first as a captain in the Marines.
Mike Mason from the FBI.
And later as the number 4 man at the FBI.
Good afternoon.
Mike left the Bureau in 2007, went on to work as an executive at a Fortune 500 company, and then the chief operating officer of this rocking chair. But Mike says retirement did not sit well with him.
I still had a mind, and I still had things I thought I was capable of doing.
But if Mike was going to start a new chapter, he knew it would have to be something really important, a job with a big payout, worthy of his time. So in the end, the choice was clear.
How you doing? Hi.
From top of the FBI
Doing great.
to head of the BUS, Mike Mason may be the most overqualified school bus driver in America.
When I gave them my resume, I actually got called by a very senior person in the county, and he said, just checking.
Did you mean to apply for this job?
Why do you want to be a bus driver? And I told him.
Mike had heard the Chesterfield County Public School District was down 125 drivers, part of a national crisis. In fact, more than half the school districts in America are reporting severe driver shortages. So Mike stepped up and went all in. I mean, this guy actually waxes his bus.
Why? Because it's just how I roll.
This is the Marines coming back.
It is. But I think this is important work. I do.
Do you sincerely believe that what you're doing today is as important as what you were doing at the FBI?
I do. I think in our society, we need to get next to the idea that there are no unimportant jobs. I mean, what could be more important than the attention we pay to our education system?
So you continue to advance in your career?
That's exactly right. I'm paid a lot less, but I continue to advance in my career. Yes, indeed.
As for the salary, Mike says he already donated all of what he expects to make this year, more than $30,000 to various charities. But of course, the much bigger gift is far less tangible. Mike Mason had climbed to the highest level,
According to the indictment,
but by stepping back down to the bottom rung, he is giving us the greatest leadership of all. Leadership by example.
All right, see you later.
Steve Hartman, on the road in Midlothian, Virginia.
Let's face it, you never know what will happen when the phone rings at the police station. This time it led to an unexpected journey. Here's Steve Hartman on the road.
A lot of police officers go above and beyond. Playing basketball with kids, mowing grass for seniors. We see examples on the news all the time. But few officers have gone further out of their way than Sergeant Jeff Turney of the Glendale, Arizona Police Department. It started with this call to dispatch.
I have a 94-year-old father. He's loaded up a trailer and thinks he can drive his vehicle in the trailer to Florida, and I'd like to have somebody talk to him if they could.
Police responded to the home of Howard Benson.
What can I do for you? Your family's concerned about you.
Walked in the door and I saw him sitting there, and I said, we're not going to talk any sense into this guy.
Where are you moving to? Florida.
There was no stopping him.
I had my mind made up. I was going to do it.
Never mind that Howard has no business behind the wheel of anything other than his power chair. He was going to tow a trailer 2,200 miles to his new assisted living facility in Fort Myers. Of course, his kids, who all live out of town, were insisting he fly and just ship his stuff.
That's right.
How come you didn't listen to any of them?
I'm stubborn.
Howard was going to Florida.
And when Sergeant Turney realized there was no talking sense into this guy, he decided to do something equally irrational.
He wants to take this table with him, so...
He started by coming over after work to pack up that trailer. And when Howard asked if this meant Jeff was also going to find someone to drive him to Florida,
I said, no, Howard, I don't think I can get anybody to go with you, but how about I drive you?
The next day, they were off.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
Jeff requested vacation time to do this. And along the way, they talked about everything.
Japanese soldiers.
From Howard's service in the Navy during World War II to his anxiety about moving into assisted living.
I hope that all the people that I meet there are nice people.
When they arrived 4 days later,
nice and slow,
Sergeant Turney said he would stay until Howard felt comfortable in his new surroundings.
You got her, buddy.
You're in the Navy?
Yeah.
Wow. You look so good.
Oh, thank you.
And he's fine. All thanks to the police officer who went way out of his way.
As an officer, you're only expected to do so much.
As a person, though, you got to step up.
I've never seen a person so dedicated to helping people in my life. I can't thank that gentleman enough.
America can't thank both gentlemen enough. Steve Hartman, on the road in Fort Myers.
Finally tonight, what wouldn't you do for your best friend? Here's Steve Hartman on the road.
It takes real tenacity to make it on the U.S. women's sled hockey team. But what sets 36-year-old Christy Gardner apart and what brought us here to Lewiston, Maine, isn't her doggedness. It's her dog.
Let's go.
This is Moxie, Christy's service dog and her hero.
She's absolutely been a lifesaver.
You mean that literally?
Quite literally. That dog saved my life.
There you go, kiddo.
Christy, an Army vet, lost both her legs after an attack overseas.
Good girl.
She got Moxie to help with daily tasks. But more importantly, during her darkest days, Christy says her golden retriever was the only thing that stopped her from ending her own life.
The way she would just look at you, her eyes would go right through to your soul. And I felt like I was disappointing her. And so having her by my side was the only reason I didn't kill myself.
Christy is now much better, but she has felt indebted to her dog ever since.
I feel like she deserves so much more.
Unfortunately, there is no good way to repay a debt to a dog.
You're my best buddy.
Especially not the magnitude of debt Christy feels she owes Moxie. Which is why, instead of paying it back, she has come up with the sweetest plan to pay it forward.
Meet Tiny Tim. He's not just any puppy. He's a puppy like her.
I gotta go back to class.
Christy has taken Tim and his bum wing under her wing and is now training the pup to be a therapy dog.
They're working on manners.
Ideally, she'd like him to work full-time here at Leeds Elementary, helping kids who feel broken.
There's just so much about him that is so perfect for this little mission of his. I think the kids are gonna say, well, he had all these problems and he didn't give up, and look how happy he is.
But before Tim can be a certified therapy dog,
So soft.
he needs a surgery to amputate his bad leg. Christy had been working multiple jobs to pay for that until this assembly.
A check for $10,000 to pay for all of Tiny Tim's medical expenses.
VetraScience, a pet food supplement company, made the donation, delighting both trainer and trainee.
Okay.
Looks like that debt has been repaid in full.
Moxie saves you. You saved Tiny Tim.
And now Tiny Tim's going to save the town. It's pretty cool.
Very cool, but also exhausting. Steve Hartman on the road in Lewiston, Maine.
What better way to end Thanksgiving week than by checking in on one of the most generous people we've met this year? Here's Steve Hartman on the road.
You'd be hard-pressed to find anyone in America more thankful this week than the residents of the Midtown Motel in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Each and every guest says they owe a heaping helping of gratitude to this man, motel owner Jarrett Hucks. As we first reported a couple months ago, during the Florence flooding, Jarrett stayed open for business.
Jarrett Hucks, nice to meet you.
Or more like, open for charity.
We'll take care of him.
Jarrett actually gave away more than 1,000 free nights to this community's poorest and most vulnerable evacuees.
I don't know what we would have done, to be honest with you. I don't know where we would be right now.
There's so many other ways you want to say thank you.
There's no words to describe what it means to our family.
Love thy neighbor, right? That's what you're supposed to do.
I've read that somewhere.
Yeah, I've read it somewhere too. My mama taught me that a long time ago. All right, you're in. You need a room key, don't you?
So far, Jarrett has given away about $50,000 worth of goods and services. But even more important is the generosity he has inspired in others.
People started running to me right away. How can I help? What can I do?
They brought diapers, ice, and plenty of food. Anyone staying at the Midtown now gets 3 square meals a day. In fact, from the new shoes on their feet to the hairs on their head, we did not see a single need go unmet here.
You're being such a good boy.
Especially for the children, who now play wonderfully oblivious to the suffering that surrounds them. Since we first told this story in September, Jarrett has been flooded too.
Read this one.
With mail. Most offer kudos, but many come with cash, which Jarrett uses to help the Midway families get back on their feet. Whether it's a car repair or a down payment on a new apartment, Jarrett is now a full-service Good Samaritan, further guaranteeing that he has made his mama proud. Steve Hartman, on the road in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
You want to see what true friendship looks like? CBS's Steve Hartman takes us to Nashville for tonight's On the Road.
Every week, Andy Gullahorn goes for a walk. And every week, about 1.5 miles away, his friend Gabe Scott does the same thing at the same time. They walk toward each other, and when they meet, it's the weirdest thing. You see that? Clap, snap, high five. Then, often, they simply walk home. The whole exercise, their way of saying hi.
You realize people have telephones and you can just call your buddy.
You're right, we should have been doing that this whole time.
Yeah.
And pick up the phone is great, but I've got a friend who literally will walk through the rain and the snow just to give me a high five. And I wish everybody could feel that feeling.
Andy and Gabe are musicians in Nashville. They met at a concert in 2000 and became friends. They got together on occasion, but not as often as they would have liked. So they invented this bit of silliness 7 years ago as a way of guaranteeing they see each other at least once a week.
So this is the high five journal.
Andy has a log of every encounter, including the one that was nearly their last.
It was high five number 312.
Gabe was hospitalized with a severe form of encephalitis. It caused his brain to swell and robbed him of his past.
I pretty much forgot my life.
Your whole life?
Yeah.
And that's when his buddy Andy, now a virtual stranger, came to visit.
I said, well, Gabe, this is going to sound really weird, but I need you to do something for me. Give me a high five. And he was like, okay.
When the moment happened, my body just did what it's been doing for years. Clap, snap, high five.
That was in September. Since then, a lot of his memories have returned, but few more cherished than this silly tradition, which doesn't seem quite so silly anymore.
It's really special to have a memory of something. To have something that's this consistent in my life, that means this much.
Andy even wrote a song about their ritual.
So take a walk with me on Monday morning.
It's a reminder that going out of your way for someone is still the straightest path to an everlasting friendship.
Knowing the small things matter, it's really no small thing.
Steve Hartman, CBS News, on the road.